I was lucky enough to be a young boy born just about a half mile above Wexford Park. Actually, where I was born, there's a garage there now, there's a chemist there, there's a butcher shop. It was on the old Clonard Road. Clonard Road, Little was the name of the area, and it was in Bright Street Parish. There was no parish in Clonard that time like there is nowadays, and we were in the town parish on that side of the road, and I actually went to school. My early formative years were in the Mercy Convent right across here in the corner from Wexford Park, and I continued on there from when I was 6-7 years of age on to the CBS. And sure, that time there was no cars, or you weren't taxied to school, or your parents hadn't any cars, so I walked in that road every day with a couple of friends of mine out from my area into either Mercy Convent or CBS Wexford. When I come down here as a small boy, all there was embankments, and I remember where the old wall where all the hoarding boards are now. I remember that was a big stone wall, and there was people used to climb over that wall, left, right and centre. Every match was played here, and eventually they actually I remember they put glass on top of the wall to prevent all the boys jumping over the wall getting in. The old dressing rooms were always centred to the left and centred to the right as we look across the park here, and there was a big tunnel down along the dressing rooms to the dressing rooms to the left. And actually we never had showers in those dressing rooms either, Lar. There was maybe a tap in either one of the dressing rooms, and there was a tap outside of the dressing room where nobody showered. We just watered down, and if you were lucky enough to get near the tap, other than that you went home in your attire, or maybe, and you went home there was no fancy showers at home either. And the other end was the end that most teams preferred to go into, because they were more modern than the older ones at the left hand side. The pitch is more or less in the same place as it always was, hasn't changed a whole lot. Apart from, the beautiful stand that we're in at the moment, and the top and the bottom areas which have been developed into viewing areas for people that like to stand. I got to know everybody on my journeys home from the schools. On the way out to Clonard, I got to know the caretaker, Nick Roach, and I got to know all his family. I got to know all the staff working in the park at that time. Sansa Roach, I remember Mick Lynch, I remember Mick Pender, I remember Lord of Mercy on him, poor Mick Corish, I remember Gay Stafford, and they were all sort of volunteers in the park at that time, mainly under the tuition of the caretaker at the time, a man called, as I said, Nick Roach. At that time there was no collective training. I'd be often coming home from school 3:15, 3:30, be due home to my mother at maybe 3:45, and unknown to her, I ended up in the park most days. That the likes of Ned, I could see oil lorries out here, Jim Morrissey's oil truck, Ned Wheeler's oil truck, and I knew straight away that I knew Billy Racker's car of the time, and I knew every one of those guys by name. I knew what they were working at, I knew where they were coming from, I knew whether they were farmers or oil truckmen, but I was always welcome in here. As soon as I saw Nick Roach, Nick would say to me, "I have a job for you, Ned. You go down behind the goal where the sheep were, and as the boys are hitting the ball out into the high grass where the sheep were, it was my job to get them back." And I was absolutely over the moon. Sure, my ambitions were sort of started here in Wexford Park in terms of what I was going to do for the future. The only thing I wanted to do was hurl for the CBS, hurl for the Fire Terriers, and hurl for Wexford at that time. And I was tunnel visioned about that from the time in the mid-50s. In 1955, 1956, Wexford won the 2 All-Irelands, won a league final in 1958. The Fire Terriers trained, one time we trained at the back of the park. We had a lease on it back in the mid-60s, and we hurled up at the Clonard end where there was sheep and there was a rough terrain, and we trained there. And right into the mid-60s they had the lease. I don't know what happened. or why we ended up in my playing days for the Fight Harriers, we actually hurled in a field called Nick Kelly's up at the top of the Fight, where St Mary's in Moderntown have a lovely sports complex and a lovely pitch there now. We hurled up in Mulgannon, where it's completely housed. Now there's houses all over the place up there in the field belong to Ferguson's. We also hurled in St Peter's College Field, and we hurled in the park here in the mid-60s when the Fight Harriers had a leasehold on it. It wasn't common for Wexford Town teams to play actual competitive games here in the park, because in my time there was only districts. There was 4 districts, and nearly all district games were actually played here. We always, as a club, nobody would play the Fight Harriers because it wasn't our home ground, by the way. But for some reason or other, we had to go to Enniscorthy, go to Gorey, go to New Ross to play all the country teams, our towns teams, for that matter. Like Wexford Park wasn't like it is today, where everybody plays everybody in it, and they certainly wouldn't play us in it because for some reason or other it was reckoned that the Harriers played in Wexford Park, which was a myth. The first county senior final actually played here in the new setup and the new stands and the new pitches was actually, I think, 2001, when the last time the Harriers won the county championship, and they actually beat the Rapparees here in the final that day.